I'm so proud to be on my feet here this afternoon, entering into debate on this throne speech. And before I get into my substantive comments, I want to take a moment to thank the people that support me in the work that I do here in the Legislative Assembly, the constituents in my home constituency of Saskatoon-Nutana, who I am so proud to represent on their behalf, bringing forward their concerns, their interests, so that they can be represented on debates that matter and the motions that are before the floor here in their legislature. I had the opportunity yesterday to introduce my constituency assistant, Kerry Schaefer. She was here in your gallery watching the proceedings, and I can't say enough about how thankful I am for the excellent work that she does in our constituency office, dealing with the caseload, the casework that comes in, dealing with issues around access to social supports and utility cutoffs, access to health care and the like. And so, it's vital work. She manages it with a high degree of professionalism and dedication, and I honestly don't know where I would be without her and the work that she does on behalf of our community. And so a big thank you to Kerry. Also supporting Kerry in our constituency office for the past several months has been McGinnis Reeve. She's come on as a casual CA doing special projects, and I am so grateful for her work. She's young and enthusiastic. She's full of enthusiasm. She comes in after having completed her master's in political science, and so with great knowledge and understanding of policy development and its effect here in Saskatchewan. And so she too has been a great addition to our office, and I've been just so happy to have her these last several months contributing to the work in my office. I also want to take a moment to thank those of my constituency executive, the people that helped me on the party side. Recently, we had a change of leadership. I want to give a special thank you to Graham Mitchell, who has moved on in his career and relocated to Moose Jaw and a great position there. And I just want to thank him for all of his good work, supporting the work in our constituency executive office, and also to now welcome Lorraine Salt as our new constituency president. And just so grateful that the work that she has done for so many years, both running our fundraisers, acting as secretary, and now and also on provincial council, and now moving in to act as president for the next term, and ably supported by the rest of the executive, Tim Hutchinson, Brenda Bergen, and others. And I just want to give them a big shout out of gratitude and thanks for all the work that they do to support our membership in Nutana. Obviously a very robust, active membership, and one that I look to offer guidance and advice and understand where their priorities lie, and just say what a supreme honor it is to represent the people of Saskatoon-Nutana. I really cherished, especially this past summer, those opportunities to be out on the doorstep this past spring, summer, and into the fall, listening to my constituents and hearing their concerns. I heard so many stories about, the failures and the challenges in accessing health care, about surgeries that were long waited for and then canceled at the last minute. I heard stories of people being rushed through surgical procedures almost like they were on an assembly line, lacking in any adequate post-operative care, treatment and support, and observing a healthcare system that is deeply, deeply in crisis. And we see how on the government side, there's massive efforts underway to, make a perception that everything's fine, nothing to see here, everything's fine on the healthcare front, when the reality is anything but. And I heard those stories on the doorstep time after time after time about those challenges. But of course, that wasn't all that I heard. A lot of concern over the manufactured moral panic around the ability of youth, vulnerable youth, to be able to identify their pronouns, change their name, and how that represented misplaced priorities by this government. And I mean, it was just with absolute shock and dismay when we learned that later on that not only were they going to double down on a pronoun policy, but this government was going to take that nuclear option and introduce a bill, call an emergency session, use a notwithstanding clause to ram through a bill on the flimsiest of evidence. A mere, 17 people that were consulted? Right, 18, my mistake. And of which 8 were actually parents. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, I can assure you, I spoke to more than 8 parents this summer on the doorstep in just Saskatoon-Nutana alone that vehemently disagreed with that policy, that are concerned about the high numbers of children in their children's classroom, about the lack of supports, the erosion of supports, year after year after year, under the watch of this government, as they've cut back on educational funding, on per-student funding, to bringing our education system to the breaking point, to the point where we now have a 95% support by the teachers across this province for action to be taken during these bargaining that are currently underway. 95%. 90% of teachers voted to achieve that level of unanimity by our teachers, further displaying the crisis that has been going on in our classroom, that has been affecting parents and students, not only in my constituency of Saskatoon-Nutana, but right straight across. And I find it interesting to note that member for, which one was it? Score pad. Arm River, thank you so much. The member for Arm River, I think it was him who was just recently saying that, his children, have really known nothing but a Sask party government. And I pity those poor children that have had to endure, an education system undercut, underfunded by this government. And I say that with all sincerity. My own children, thank God, they saw the early days, but thankfully they escaped and all graduated before, the worst of it was to come. But it's something that I seriously and sincerely lament, is the underfunding of our education system here in Saskatchewan. Something that we used to be very proud of, something that, as you all should recall, that I have spoken on before and said that, education is a value that on this side of the Assembly we prioritize and understand the importance of as an investment, how it contributes to our future success as a province, and how I think every single one of us can also attest to the difference that a strong, viable education system has made in their life. Having that teacher that was able to take the time to help them at a particularly difficult point in their education, whether it was with math or, social challenges, issues on the playground, in sciences, you name it, But when you have a system that is chronically underfunded and you've got more than 30 plus students and lack of resources, that special attention can't be afforded. And it just breaks my heart to think about how our students are being failed, utterly failed by this government. And so it is no surprise that I heard that on the doorstep from my constituents time after time after time this past summer when I was engaging with my constituents. So, it's a question of misplaced priorities. We've got a government that called an emergency session to violate the charter-protected rights of vulnerable children with no evidence, no engagement. And, I have to say, I'm so proud of my team here on this side to go for 40 hours on that bill from 9 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night and really show the people of Saskatchewan, who's ready to govern and who has the right priorities to see Saskatchewan into the future. Not that side of the House, Mr. Speaker. Not the side that wants to, dredge up, fantasies and, moral panic from south of the border, but a Saskatchewan NDP government represented on this side who understands the priorities of health care, of cost of living, of education, supports for mental health and addictions, homelessness. And I could go on, and I think I will. I'm not sure I know how much time I've got to do that, but we'll see. We talk about, most recently about closing care homes and staffing shortages in hospitals and moving to, virtual emergency care in the town of Radville. I mean, there's just so many instances where this government is failing the people of Saskatchewan. I got a note last week telling me that the anesthesiologist in Swift Current is out of commission right now. They're without an anesthesiologist. I mean, how on earth are they going to be able to provide operative care without that? It's just example after example of real issues that, I'd be happy to sit here and debate all day long about, as opposed to, a manufactured crisis around pronouns as a form of distraction by this government to distract from their record and misplace that focus on things that are anything but a priority here. We see it in the most, how bizarre that this government would see the need to bring in a bill on poppies. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but we'll, I'm sure, get to that debate soon enough, and I'm proud. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud to wear my poppy, but really? A bill on the right to wear a poppy? And again, where's the evidence that this is actually an issue? The government side has been unable to give any evidence or explanation as to why that bill's been brought forward. Another case of missed priorities. And that's what I'm hearing on the doorstep, is that people are frustrated. They're frustrated that they can't access health care, that their children's needs aren't being made in the schools. And, is also reflected in the events that I had the great fortune to participate in over the last number of months since we were last in session in the springtime. I think about the tour to École Canadienne Français Elementary that we took in last June with a member from Saskatoon Eastview, a member from Saskatoon Meewasin, member for Regina Elphinstone Centre, And alongside of members from the government side, 2 members, those from Saskatoon, Riversdale, and Saskatoon Northeast, We toured the school, we saw the gaping holes in the roof and, the buckets and the plastic to redirect the water, the crowded classrooms, the gymnasium that's too small, the crowded playground, the daycare in the basement. I mean, my God, they're stuffed into this school that's over 100 years old with a roof that's leaking and so many other challenges, begging for their students to have a proper school, proper facilities, and a call that they'd been making. They had 200 parents sign a petition begging for those repairs and for those needs to be addressed, but no emergency session on that. No, that wasn't a priority. No emergency there. And yet, there we were debating an emergency session on pronouns and attacking the rights of vulnerable children. I had the opportunity to also attend the convocation at the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm so proud of our graduates from our post-secondary institutions going to be able to be contributing members of our society. And, that's the investment that I'm so proud of is in people. So whether it's in our community-based organizations, supporting people that way, supporting people in the healthcare system, advanced ed, primary education, that's when we're our strongest, and that's what we need to build and protect. I wish I had more time to, talk about the throne speech and all of the community outreach that I had such a privilege to undertake these past number of months, whether it was in my critic areas, community-based events in my constituency, Saskatoon, Nutana, Fringe Festival, Broadway Street Fair, Saskatoon Folk Festival, Ukrainian Day in the Park, the YXE Pancakes Breakfast, Wanuskewin National Indigenous Peoples Day, the Inclusion Breakfast, the Labor Day Picnic that was sponsored by the SDLC. But one that I do want to highlight in the few remaining minutes that I have is a tour that I was so happy to take with one of our newest members from Regina Walsh Acres up to the Cumberland River Delta back in September to see the challenges. And when I think we talk about protecting our resources, and I can't think of anything more precious than water and the need to protect that, and to go up to the Saskatchewan River Delta and see the massive devastation that is occurring there because of a lack of water and a lack of policy by this government to ensure that our ecosystems are protected and that our communities are protected. And, it was only a couple weeks after that I had returned that the community called a state of emergency. Their water supply was almost gone, and there had been no communication from the Water Security Agency, from SaskPower, to notify the community and dealing with that emergent crisis until they called that state of emergency. Just an absolute travesty that a community would have to get to that extent of a dire situation before government would step in and help them out. And then further to that, when they had reached out to me and I said, okay, well, I'm going to look into this for you. I'm going to submit some written questions on your behalf. We'll get to the bottom of this. We'll find out what's going on. And when I did that, 5 legislative days later, I get told that my questions have been commuted 180 days. This is a crisis, emergency situation, and they've punted my questions out 180 days in an emergency. Such a shameful situation, such a shameful misplacement of priorities by this government. And so I know my time is up. And I do want to say that there is much more to be said, and I wish I had time for it, but I will not be supporting this throne speech. I will be supporting the amendment moved by the member from Regina Elphinstone Centre and seconded by the member from Regina Rosemont, amending the motion to read that the Assembly does not support the agenda outlined in the speech from the throne because it fails to include adequate measures to address the cost of living crisis and the healthcare crisis the people of Saskatchewan are facing, and that further, that the Assembly has lost confidence in the government.